Can you feel it? Can you feel the joy rising in here?
I can, and I have to tell you, there's so much that I love about our campaign because it really is about the people. And I look around at these screens, Oprah, I look at who's in the room, and this is America.
This is
America. You know, I was saying with a group of friends earlier, I think in this moment where we've dealt with so much that I think is quite exhausting around powerful forces that would try and divide us and try us to have us as Americans pointing fingers at each other.
Yes.
That this movement that is about reminding each other that we have so much more in common than what separates us is so critically important. And this is about the strength of who we are as Americans. And this movement that we're in about, as I like to say, seeing in the face of a stranger a neighbor.
Yes, yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes.
An extension of love thy neighbor, that you literally in the face of a stranger see a neighbor.
Yes.
And approach each other with that level of dignity and grace and kindness.
Madam Vice President, you just laid out your economic vision for the future.
Yeah.
But still, there are lots of Americans who don't see themselves in your plans. For those who say these policies aren't for me, what do you say to them?
Well, if you are hardworking, if you have the dreams and the ambitions and the aspirations of what I believe you do, you're in my plan. You know, I have to tell you, I really love and am so energized by what I know to be the spirit and character of the American people. We have ambition, we have aspirations, we have dreams. We can see what's possible. We have an incredible work ethic. But not everyone has the access to the opportunities that allow them to achieve those things. But we don't lack for those things. But not everyone, you know, gets handed stuff on a silver platter. And so my vision for the economy, I call it an opportunity economy, is about making sure that all Americans, wherever they start, wherever they are, have the ability to actually achieve those dreams and those ambitions, which include, for middle-class families, just being able to know that their hard work allows them to get ahead, right? I think we can't and we shouldn't aspire to have an economy that just allows people to get by. People want to do more than just get by. They want to get ahead. And I come from the middle class. Look, my mother raised my sister and me. She worked hard. She saved up. By the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. And, you know, home ownership for too many people in our country now is elusive. You know, gone is the day of everyone thinking they could actually live the American dream. So part of my vision for the economy is let's deal with some of the everyday challenges that people face and address them with common sense solutions, such as affordable housing.
You said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist. They will tell you, we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that that's going to get fixed, Brett. Well, that's how this system works.
That's the premise.
Yeah. So Elon Musk is giving away $1 million a day to voters who sign a petition. Do you have concerns about that in the context of law, you know, the sort of legal framework around elections? And secondly, a Reuters investigation has shown something like 300 cases of political violence already in the run-up to the election. Can you just address what can be done and what the federal government can do to push back against that?
Well, on the first point, I think people are looking into that. On the second point...
When you say people, do you mean the U.S. government?
I mean, I hear that folks are looking into it just based on the stuff you all are reporting. On the second point, there should be no place in America where we are seeing political violence. And sadly, we have seen, if we just look back to January 6th, when that occurred in a way that was most shocking and brought on because, of course, of Donald Trump, who incited a mob, a violent mob, that attacked the United States Capitol, wherein over 140 uniformed law enforcement officers were injured and some were killed. And where Donald Trump has still yet to acknowledge the travesty of that day and the political violence that occurred that day. So I will say and repeat what I think most people understand. In America, in a democracy, we should have no room for, nor should we ever condone any form of political violence. In a democracy, people will debate, people will disagree, but not resort to violence.
Yeah. U.S. Steel.
Yes.
Right? When you think Pennsylvania, when you think Pittsburgh, you got the Liberty Bell in Philly, and you got U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh.
That's right.
A Japanese company wants to buy them. You are opposed to this idea. Many people are. But if the deal doesn't go through, they have said people could lose jobs, they could close mills, they could leave the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, that is like moving the Liberty Bell to Newark. So which is more important?
It's most important that we maintain America's ability to have American manufacturing of steel by American workers for a number of reasons, which includes, again, back to the point of growing our economy and how I think about the economy overall, investing in new industries. There is not a new industry that I can imagine that is not going to require steel as a manufacturing of steel as a fundamental part of what it accomplishes. And having American workers in an American company manufacturing that steel for those new industries is going to be critically important, not only in terms of our economy, but also in the context of national security. Most people now realize if we didn't before the pandemic and the strain on supply chains and an over-reliance on foreign manufacturing, that we have to be intentional about U.S.-based manufacturing. And of the products that we have to prioritize, steel is one of them. And that's always going to be my priority.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that. And there are a number of ways. One is bringing down the cost of everyday necessities, including groceries. So that's why I'm taking on, for example, price gouging. Which is when, you know, most companies and corporations are good, but for those bad ones, they take advantage of people, especially during a pandemic or extreme weather, and they end up jacking up prices, and there needs to be accountability and consequence for that. So I'm going to be taking on price gouging. But it's also about dealing with what we need to do around home ownership, right? So as someone mentioned during this film, look, I grew up a child of a mother who worked very hard. She raised me and my sister, and she saved up, and by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy a home. And we grew up actually for a long time in an apartment on top of a child care center that was owned by the woman we called our second mother because she helped my mother raise us. And she was a small business owner, Miss Shelton. So I'll bring all this together to tell you the way I think about it is, one, when people work hard and have a dream of buying a home, we should give you the opportunity to be able to do that, which is why part of my plan is for first-time homeowners, buyers, to have a $25,000 down payment assistance to buy your first home. Because people just need to be able to get their foot in the door, and then you'll do the hard work. Part of my plan is what we need to do to support small businesses, because my second mother was a small business owner, and I love our small businesses and our small business owners. They are
not only business leaders, they are community leaders. They mentor, they hire locally, and we have so many entrepreneurs in our country who have great ideas, incredible work ethic, but not necessarily access to capital, because not everybody, like my opponent, was handed $400 million on a silver plate that he filed bankruptcy 6 times on. And so part of my plan is to give startup small businesses a $50,000 tax deduction to start up their small business. Right now it's $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So that's part of my plan.
That's a teeny tiny business.
That's a business in
teeny tiny business.
It's a concept of a business, right?
Yes.
But not all unions have gotten behind you. I want to understand, when the Teamsters decided not to endorse you, what was their reasoning? What are they looking for?
Well, let me go back to our just previous conversation. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of the steelworkers and almost every other major union in America, because I stand by workers and I stand by the importance of being able to join a union and to understand the benefit and the value of unions. And I understand the importance of investing in new industries and working actively with the private sector to grow our economy.
But I'm asking because there's this idea, we want something more from her. What is it?
Well, here's the thing, that back to your point about previous election cycles, Donald Trump made a whole lot of promises that he did not meet, and one would argue broke. Look at Lordstown. He said he was going to...
Don't sell your homes.
Yeah, don't sell your homes. And what happened? It shut down. Outsourcing under Donald Trump. His policies that are about putting, you know, tens to hundreds of % tariffs.
John Deere.
Yes. Yes. So part of the challenge, and I don't disagree that it's a challenge, got to earn the vote of everybody, is reminding people of fact, regardless of what somebody says in a small rally somewhere. And I think that's really important. And that's part of what I'm doing in this campaign, is to remind people, just like here in Pittsburgh, of the reality of who has stood with union labor, who stands for American manufacturing, who stands for American jobs.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, and thank you, Anderson. Madam Vice President, everybody as human beings, we're not perfect. We have our flaws. We make mistakes. We have our weaknesses. And the office of the presidency can sometimes bring those weaknesses out in ways that the incumbent may not expect. What weaknesses do you bring to the table, and how do you plan to overcome them while you're in office?
That's a great question, Joe. Well, I am certainly not perfect, so let's start there. And I think that perhaps a weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength, is I really do value having a team of very smart people around me who bring to my decision-making process different perspectives. My team will tell you, I am constantly saying, let's kick the tire on that. Let's kick the tires on it. Because, listen, as I mentioned earlier, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a courtroom prosecutor. I've tried everything from low-level offenses to homicides. And I learned at a very early stage of my career and adult life that my actions have a direct impact on real people in a very fundamental way. When I was Attorney General of California, I was Attorney General of what is the 5th largest economy in the world, and acutely aware that my words could move markets. So I take my role and responsibility as an elected leader very seriously, and I know the impact it has on so many people I may never meet. And that is why I engage and bring folks around. So I may not be quick to have the answer as soon as you ask it about a specific policy issue sometimes, because I'm going to want to research it. I'm going to want to study it. I'm kind of a nerd sometimes, I confess. And some might call that a weakness, especially if you're, in an interview or just kind of, being asked a certain question and you expect to have the right answer right away. But that's how I work.
Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell.
Ask you about tariffs, because you just mentioned it. It's not just with one company. Donald Trump's sort of big idea is this broad-based tariffs across the board. You and many others have said that would be not only disastrous, but it would be a direct tax on the American consumer.
It would be a sales tax on the American people. That the independent economists have already measured this by the sales tax of doing a 20% tariffs on all imports that he has described would be a 20% sales tax, in essence, on basic necessities for the average American worker, average American family, totaling almost $4,000 a year. That is no small matter. Here in Pittsburgh, when I'm talking to a group of folks who work here, who live here, and when they hear it might be $4,000 more a year for them, look, people can't afford that.
But you have teams ready to go? Is that what you're saying? Are you thinking about that as a possibility?
Of course. This is a person, Donald Trump, who tried to undo a free and fair election, who still denies the will of the people, who incited a violent mob to attack the United States Capitol, and 140 law enforcement officers were attacked. Some were killed. This is a serious matter. The American people are, at this point, 2 weeks out, being presented with a very, very serious decision about what will be the future of our country. And it includes whether we are a country that values a president who respects their duty to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Donald Trump had said he would terminate the Constitution of the United States. The American people are being presented with a choice here about whether we want a president who understands that America must stand strong as a leader around the globe, or an individual in Donald Trump who openly admires dictators. My goodness, recent reports that he gave COVID tests to the president of Russia during the height of the pandemic here, when Americans couldn't get their hands on COVID tests. These are the choices before the American people right now. The choice before the American people is the choice to choose to turn the page on the division and the hate, and to bring our country together, knowing the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, and that we can be optimistic about a new generation of leadership that is focused on what we have yet to achieve, to uplifting the American people. And, you know, I'll just mention earlier, a couple of folks talked about what this means in terms of the world. You know, as vice president, I've met over 150 world leaders. Presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings. And the thing about representing the United States of America is when we walk in those rooms around the world, we have historically and traditionally been able to walk in those rooms chin up, shoulders back, with the self-appointed and earned authority to talk about the importance of democracies. People around the world are watching right now. Because you see, the thing about walking into a room and being a role model is people watch what you do to see if it lines up with what you say. And in that way, the consequences of this election are directly going to impact the American people and people around the world. That's what we're fighting for, and those are the stakes. And that's why we're going to win, because we know what we're fighting for. Because we know what we stand for.
And I wonder how you feel about them. What comes to your mind? How do you prepare when you prepare a policy that the one you're announcing today, and when you meet them? What comes to your mind when you think about Latinos in the United States?
A lot. I'll start with the fact that on so many of the biggest issues, we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Latinos, like everyone, care about bringing down costs of groceries, the everyday cost of life. I think of the Latino community in terms of the extraordinary ambition, the aspirations, the dreams that exist in the community, understanding it is not a monolith, but that not unlike any other community, there are dreams and hopes, but not necessarily always access to opportunity. And a lot of my agenda is about creating opportunity for people to succeed. So, for example, part of the agenda that I've rolled out that I am very aware how it would affect Latino men, for example, includes what we need to do around building a strong economy that supports working people. Understanding that, for example, small business people, small business owners don't always have access to the capital they need to grow their business or even for people to start a small business. And I know that Latino men often have a more difficult time having access to the big loans from the big banks because of relationships, because of things that are not necessarily grounded in their qualification. So I'm focused on what we can do to bring more capital to community banks that will understand the community and being able to give those kinds of loans. My focus is on small businesses, understanding that right now the tax deduction for a small business is $5,000. Nobody can start a small business on $5,000. So I'm going to grow it so that it's $50,000 tax deduction to start up a small business. Home ownership. Latinos, only half of Latino households are homeowners, right? So part of my plan is to do what we can to give people the opportunity for home ownership, which is about building intergenerational wealth. So my plan includes a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers so they can get their foot in the door to home ownership. So my agenda around an opportunity economy will benefit all Americans, but I am also aware of the specific impact on the Latino community.
Yes. You frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
But tariffs aren't unique to President Trump. President Biden has tariffs in place. He's actually looking to potentially implement more. Where do you come out on? Is there a good tariff, a bad tariff?
Well, part of it is you don't just throw around the idea of just tariffs across the board, and that's part of the problem with Donald Trump. Frankly, and I say this in all sincerity, he's just not very serious about how he thinks about some of these issues. And one must be serious and have a plan, and a real plan that's not just about some talking point ending in an exclamation at a political rally, but actually putting the thought into what will be the return on the investment, what will be the economic impact on everyday people. And when you look at my plans, you will see what those benefits will be. $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. You know what that means? Then you're creating the ability of that working person to build intergenerational wealth. Doing the work of a $6,000 child tax credit, doing the work of a $50,000 tax deduction for first-time small businesses, startups, because right now...
That's a real plan.
It's a real plan, because right now, and again, it's about paying attention to the detail and being serious about it. I'm serious about my enthusiasm and for small businesses and my belief in what they will do as part of America's economic engine.
On Friday, sorry.
So looking at the fact that right now the tax deduction is $5,000, nobody in this year of our Lord 2024 can start a small business with $5,000. Very few can. So extending it to $50,000 tax deduction for startups to generate the innovation and the ambition of the ideas that are present and among us, but need the fuel to be able to actually achieve the goal.
Let's talk about this compromise bill that you want to pass if you're elected. You said that's going to be a priority. It includes $650 million in funding for the border wall. That's something Republicans wanted. That was part of the compromise. Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill
on.
that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
Have made it clear that you believe this is a binary choice between you and Donald Trump. Those are the candidates on the ballot.
There's only
of course.
two choices.
Yes. And I know that Joe Biden is not on the ballot. I understand that. But the reason that you are at the top of the ticket is because he dropped out of this race. And so I want to ask you, and it was largely because of that debate performance back in June. You defended him in the days before and in the days after as you were campaigning for another 4 years for President Biden. Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
And you never saw anything like what happened at the debate night behind closed doors with him?
It was a bad debate. People have bad debates. He is absolutely.
But that's the reason why you're here, and he's not running for the top of the ticket.
Well, you'd have to ask him if that's the only reason why.
What do you think?
I am running for president of the United States. Joe Biden is not. And my presidency will be about bringing a new generation of leadership to America that is focused on the work that we need to do to invest in the ambitions and aspirations of the American people.
It's a judgment question. That's why I ask. Can the American people trust you in these moments, even when it's maybe uncomfortable for Americans to level with Americans in that way? So that's why I ask. And it sounds like what you're saying is you feel like you never saw anything like that from President Biden.
I have worked with Joe Biden, hours and hours and hours over these 4 years, whether it be in the Situation Room or the Oval Office.
You have called him a racist and divisive, yet Donald Trump has the support of millions and millions of Americans. How do you explain that?
I'm glad you are pointing these comments out that he has made that have resulted in a response by most reasonable people to say it's just wrong. It's just wrong.
With so many people supporting Donald Trump, the man you have called a racist, how do you bridge that seemingly unbridgeable gap?
I believe that the people of America want a leader who's not trying to divide us and demean. I believe that the American people recognize that the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, it's based on who you lift up.
The country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page You've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam Vice President.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become. But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
What is on your heart to say to the American people as we have 47 days until November 5th? What's on your heart? To say to particularly those people who are still undecided or maybe indifferent or on the fence still?
We love our country. I love our country. I know we all do. That's why everybody's here right now. We love our country. We take pride in the privilege of being American. And this is a moment where we can and must come together as Americans, understanding we have so much more in common than what separates us. Let's come together with the character that we are so proud of about who we are, which is we are an optimistic people. We are an optimistic people. Americans, by character, are people who have dreams and ambitions and aspirations. We believe in what is possible. We believe in what can be. And we believe in fighting for that. That's how we came into being. Because the people before us understood that one of the greatest expressions for the love of our country, one of the greatest expressions of patriotism, is to fight for the ideals of who we are, which includes freedom to make decisions about your own body, freedom to be safe from gun violence, freedom to have access to the ballot box, freedom to be who you are and just be, to love who you love openly and with pride, freedom to just be. And that's who we are. We believe in all that. And so this is a moment where we stand knowing what we are fighting for. We're not fighting against. It's what we're fighting for.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Vice President. Thank you.
So I just want to ask you yes or no. At any point in your life, have you served 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, working at a McDonald's? Yes or no? That's it.
I have.
Okay. Now the other job.
But it was not a small job. Like, I did the fries. I mean, yes.
Okay, for a small period of time. But then
I love McDonald's. I love jobs. I like to see good jobs. And I think it's inappropriate when somebody puts down all over the place that she worked at McDonald's. It was a big part of her resume that she worked at McDonald's, how tough a job it was. She specifically worked at the French fry, where they make the French fries, and she talked about the heat. It was so tough. She never worked at McDonald's. McDonald's just confirmed that again, by the way. She never worked at McDonald's. In other words, she's lying, Kamala. It's a great setup, huh?